Hey everyone, it's Darren. Welcome. Today's video, we're going to be talking about correlation versus causation. These are two terms that you might hear when you're hearing about scientific studies being done. Anytime you hear a scientific study, the first thing that you want to prove is that the A and B are somehow linked together. If they're not linked together, you can't really proceed. If A and B are linked, you can say that there is a correlation between A and B. You don't know what that correlation is, you just know it's there. Uh, Causation is something that has a lot more detail to it. Causation is A causes B. Let's go ahead and take a look at what this amounts to here. Okay, so when we look at correlation to start with, correlation is where you always have to start. Until you've proven a correlation, you can't really get to a causation anyway. So for correlation, the options are that either A causes B, or that B causes A, or something completely different causes both A and B, or, oh, they aren't really related at all. So those are our options. Let's look at a couple of examples for that and try to explain things a little bit better. A lot of times you'll hear in the news, there was a correlation discovered or a link discovered between drinking diet pop or diet soda, depending on what part of the world you live in, and being overweight. And yeah, okay, I can accept that. There's been big studies done that have found that correlation. Now, a lot of people jump to the conclusion that that means that they're saying that drinking diet pop, I live in Michigan where it's pop, drinking diet pop causes people to be overweight. That hasn't been proven. What's been proven is that uh, the relationship exists. So people who drink diet pop and people who are overweight tend to sort of be the same people. Uh, but it's not known whether drinking diet pop causes people to be overweight, which is A causes B. Being overweight causes people to drink diet pop, or B causes A. Something completely different causes people to both drink diet pop and be overweight. Genetic differences, differences of taste, hormonal differences, whatever. Or maybe they aren't really related at all. And if we do more studies to try to link that, we might find they're not really connected at all. Uh, so, how do we figure out what's really going on? Well, that's the next part. So, if we look at causation, causation is actually trying to decide, does A cause B? Does B cause A? Or are they not really related at all? There's something else going on. So, the uh, the options are, so if we go back to the pop one, for example, uh, A causes B. Drinking diet pop causes people to gain weight. First, the study that we've done, the studies that have been done, don't really document that at all. None of them that I've seen, at least. They just document there's a correlation between them. Uh, the second option, that being overweight causes people to drink diet pop, I think probably makes more sense. Uh, so if you think about, does it make more sense that drinking a beverage which contains 0 calories, like water, causes people to gain weight? Or does it make more sense that people who see themselves as overweight are more likely to try to get rid of empty calories in a can of Coke, for example, by drinking diet pop, which until you get used to the taste, doesn't really taste that great. Which one makes more sense here? And you know, there are ways of determining which it is, which is to conduct further studies, further experimentation. That's the topic for the next video, though not this one. This video is just explaining the differences and trying to understand the differences a little bit better. Let's take a look at another example and see if we can determine, is it correlation or is it causation or is it something else going on here? Um, Back a few decades ago, they realized that people having heart attacks tended to have higher blood cholesterol levels than the average population. Okay, so there's a link there. And you've probably already figured out that means it's correlation, not causation. They've documented correlation. How did they get there? Again, that's the next video where we're talking about the different kinds of studies you can do. Uh, so we have a correlation between heart attacks and high cholesterol, but then they actually did some experimentation, and what they discovered was that they could cut the blood cholesterol by using drugs, Lipitor and others of that type, for example, and that would cut the blood cholesterol. And now they found something strange, though, which is that uh, even though they cut the blood cholesterol through these drugs, it didn't really impact the risk of heart disease. So people who would have had higher cholesterol without it, in a lot of cases, they expected it to cut it to normal levels, and it didn't. So that means there's something else. There's a negative causation here. There's a correlation, but it's something else is going on. Is it physical activity levels? Is it genetics? Something else? And again, that's where you have to go into the further experimental data to figure it out. But they determined that there's probably no causation there. It does improve some, so they're still using Lipitor, but it doesn't improve as much as expected. Okay, so let's talk about one more example here. We're going to talk about cigarette smoking. For decades, cigarette smoking was planted as being this actually very healthy thing to do. You had doctors advising their patients to do it. It was good for weight loss. It was good for all kinds of things. And then they kind of stopped recommending it, and then they kind of figured out that, well, it's really pretty bad for you, and then they kind of figured out it will probably kill you. Uh, but towards the end of this, well, towards the middle of it, really, they figured out that there is a correlation between long-term smoking and lung cancer. Uh, Now, that's correlation. There's a link between them. Proving that causation was very challenging, and we'll get into why in the next video. Uh, but there's a correlation. Now, when you hear about the correlations, you know, you can either just completely ignore the stuff that's going on, or you can try to figure out what it means. In this case, if if you think about it, either, and if we come back up here to our previous slides here, either A causes B, long-term cigarette smoking causes lung cancer, or B causes A, lung cancer causes you to go back in time 30 years and start smoking cigarettes. Or there's something else, maybe a genetic trait, which causes you to both want to smoke cigarettes and be more prone to lung cancer. That could happen. It could be a genetic thing that causes that. Or it's possible that the two aren't really related in any way whatsoever. Uh, of those four options, cigarette smoking causing lung cancer is a risk to you today. Lung cancer causing you to go back in time 30 years to start smoking cigarettes, I think we can disregard that one pretty safely. Um, Something completely different, a genetic trait that causes you to both want to smoke cigarettes and become addicted to nicotine and also have an increased risk of lung cancer, that's entirely possible. Uh, that's something you can't control for today. A causes B, you have control of. You can choose not to smoke and be healthier. If some unknown genetic trait causes you to both smoke and develop lung cancer independently of each other, you can't really do anything with that. Also, if you have the two factors are completely unrelated, and some of the data just happen to look that way because of some study anomaly, that doesn't really impact your health at all. So, looking at the four options here from that correlation only, one of those four things is both in your control and is to the benefit of your health to act on it. So that's kind of what you can do when you hear about a correlation between two things. You hear about a link between two things, is kind of evaluate, you know, how does this make sense? Does this make sense? And do I want to act on it? More studies will probably get done on it. In the case of uh, things like cigarette smoking, it's very difficult to do those studies, and we'll get into why in the other video. In the case of cholesterol drugs, for example, uh, where they know that the correlation was high blood cholesterol and uh, increased risk of heart disease. Does increased risk of heart disease increase your cholesterol? It's possible, I suppose, uh, but there's a way to lower it and get some benefit, even though it wasn't as much as they anticipated. So it's worth doing because that's going to be to your health benefit, even though they can't quite explain what else is going on. So that's part of the problem with some of these is that it may be it's not A causes B, but A, B, and C all get together and cause D. And we've only discovered one or two of those things so far. So how do you actually evaluate what's going on then? This sounds pretty confusing, doesn't it? And you know, knowing that there's a correlation, evaluate what's going on, evaluate what, if anything, you want to do with it. In the case of medical things, uh, there is not as much benefit as they thought from lowering cholesterol, but there's still some benefit. Probably worth taking care of it. In the case of smoking, probably worth not smoking, even if you think you've got these four options and 25% chance that it's smoking, long-term smoking causes lung cancer. If you could cut your chances of getting lung cancer 25%, that's worth it. Uh, so, where you proceed is that, you recognize that the link was found. If you can dig into the study more, if you can stand to read through some of the scientific studies, some of them are easy enough to read. Most scientific studies, they'll have a synopsis at the beginning that explains in summary what's going on, and then they get into the really long scientific stuff that might be hard to read. But that first page or two or three is usually pretty easy for normal people to read. So you can access it there. Uh, when you hear, if you are finding correlation and suspecting causal relationships, and you're working in the scientific world, where you go from there is you actually conduct scientific studies. And scientific studies is the topic of the next video, as you've probably caught already. And I'm going to leave it for the next video. But in the meantime, if you've learned anything from this video, if you can just explain the difference between correlation and causation, you're way ahead of most people in the world today. If you understand what that difference is and what to do with it. So if you like this video at all, please hit like and subscribe. And I also have a Patreon page at patreon.com/data analysis excellence. If you could help out there, a few bucks a month would be great. If you have any questions or comments, leave those down in the comments for the video. And I'll see you over on the next video.